As part of We the People, celebrating 250 years, here's This Day in History.
Well, as we count down to America's 250th birthday, we are sharing our We the People series, This Day in History. We're learning a lot about some sports trivia, Charlie.
There's been a lot of sports trivia lately, and today is no exception. On this day, April 8th, back in 1993, the Green Bay Packers signed legendary NFL defensive end Reggie White in free agency, and it pretty much turned the Packers around. He made the Packers a destination for players. The nickname Minister of Defense came with it. He earned that as a senior at Tennessee. It had something to do with the fact that he became an ordained minister at the age of 17. They threw that on there when he was in Tennessee, and it followed him to the Packers. In 1993, after recording 124 sacks in 121 games over 8 seasons in Philadelphia, White became the first big-name free agent to switch teams and join the Packers. He instantly helped turn the fortunes of the once proud franchise around. The team steadily improved and in 1996 returned to glory with White leading the NFL's top-ranked defense to playoff and Super Bowl victories. In Super Bowl 31, he recorded a record 3 sacks. Reggie played 2 more years in Green Bay. During that period, he added 27 more sacks to his repertoire. And after a 1-year retirement, White returned for a final season with the Carolina Panthers in 2000. That's This Day in History for April 8th.
I think he's one of those Packers you kind of put on the Mount Rushmore. I mean, you know, you think of famous Packers players, even if you don't follow football that closely, and Reggie White would come to mind.
Right. Well, I remember the Packers before he was there, and it was not so pleasant through the 70s and 80s. And then he arrived, and like I said, he kind of made it okay to come to Green Bay. It wasn't a spot that free agents wanted to come.
Yeah. All right, Charlie, thank you.